The great hall of the Galactic Assembly buzzed with worried voices. 47 different species had gathered, and fear filled the air like smoke. Elder stood at the center platform, his scales reflecting the blue light from above. He was old, even by standards, and had seen many threats in his long life, but nothing like this. "The swarm has taken another system," he announced. His voice was steady, but everyone could hear the concern beneath it. 12 worlds, gone in 3 cycles. The hall erupted in panic. Species from every corner of the galaxy shouted over each other. Some demanded action, others wanted to flee. A few suggested surrender. In a corner of the vast library beneath the assembly hall, a young named barely noticed the chaos above. She sat surrounded by data crystals, ancient texts, and holographic displays. Her purple eyes scanned through documents that most considered worthless. Stories, myths, legends. Had spent 5 years studying one particular legend. The humans of Terra, the ghost species. Most scholars laughed at her work. Children's tales, they called it, but believed. The stories all said similar things. Humans came from a death world, a planet so dangerous that simply living there made them strong. They breathed oxygen, a gas so reactive it could rust metal. Their world had crushing gravity that would break the bones of most species. They had survived ice ages, meteor strikes, and even their own weapons. But the most interesting part was what the text said about human nature. They formed bonds with anyone. They protected the weak. They never gave up, even when losing. And they had a strange habit of running toward danger instead of away from it. "Stupid legends," muttered to herself, pulling up another file. This one was different, though. It was a star chart, encrypted and old, very old. It showed a system labeled Sol with a third planet marked in red. Terra. She had tried to verify the location. 3 times she had sent requests for scout ships to investigate. Each time they returned with the same report: empty space, no advanced life, nothing worth finding. The third planet was there, covered in water and green landmasses, but scans showed only primitive signals, nothing that matched a space-faring civilization. "Maybe they left," she whispered, "or maybe they're hiding." Above her, the assembly continued to argue. Elder tried to maintain order, but it was useless. The swarm was unlike anything they had faced. The creatures didn't negotiate. They didn't want territory or resources in the normal sense. They just consumed. They ate entire worlds, breaking them down to nothing, and then moved on to the next. A junior officer, a named, spoke up during a brief moment of silence. "What about the humans?" The hall went quiet, then someone laughed, then everyone laughed. "Humans?" A diplomat from the Empire scoffed. "Fairy tales won't save us." But the text started. "Our stories for children," Elder interrupted, though not unkindly. "I appreciate creativity, young one, but we need real solutions." Sat down, his face colored with embarrassment. But down in the library had heard every word through the audio feed. She stared at her screens, at the countless stories she had collected. Warriors who fought in conditions that would kill others. Soldiers who carried their wounded off battlefields. A species that had somehow survived everything their own planet threw at them. "Real solutions," she repeated Elder's words. Then she made a decision. Buried in the oldest texts was something special. A communication protocol. A distress signal format that ancient records claimed humans had created for first contact. It was written in mathematical patterns, universal concepts that any intelligent species should understand. At the end was a set of coordinates and a simple message template: "We need help." Hands shook as she configured the transmission. This was against regulations. She could lose her position. But what position would matter if they destroyed everything? She encoded the message carefully, sent their location, explained the threat, included star charts showing this path of destruction. Then she aimed the transmission at that distant system, at the third planet orbiting an ordinary yellow star. "Please be real," she whispered as she pressed the final command. The message shot into space, traveling faster than light toward Sol's system. Days passed. The advanced. 2 more systems fell. The assembly argued about evacuation plans. Refugee ships began launching from threatened worlds. Elder looked older each day, the weight of billions of lives on his shoulders. Checked her equipment every hour. Nothing. Just silence from Sol's system. Maybe the legends really were just stories. Maybe she had wasted their last hope on a myth. On the 7th day, as she sat in the library, exhausted and losing faith, her console beeped. It was a small sound, easy to miss, but heard it. Her screen showed an incoming transmission from Sol's system, from the 3rd planet. The signal was strange. It used old technology, older than anything the assembly had seen in centuries. The language was unknown, but the mathematical framework was clear. Someone had received her message. Someone had understood it. She ran the translation algorithms, her heart's pounding. The message was short but clear. Message received. We heard your call, preparing response. Hold on. Stared at the words. Her hands trembled. Tears ran down her face. She had spent 5 years being mocked, being called a dreamer, chasing a fantasy. But humans were real. They were real, and they were coming. She ran from the library, leaving her equipment behind. She burst into the assembly hall, interrupting Elder mid-sentence. Security moved to stop her, but she shouted loud enough for everyone to hear. They answered, the humans answered. The hall fell silent. Every eye turned to her. Elder's expression was somewhere between concern and confusion. "Scholar," he said slowly, "what have you done?" She held up her data pad, showing the transmission for all to see. "I sent the distress call from the ancient texts, to Sol's system, to Terra, and they responded." "Impossible," someone said. "Humans are myths," another added. But Elder walked down to where stood. He took her data pad and read the message himself. His old eyes widened. He read it again, as if not believing what he saw. "This is real?" he asked quietly. "Yes, Elder, they're coming." Looked up at the assembly. "It appears we're about to find out if our legends are true." Far across the galaxy, in a system most considered empty and unremarkable, something stirred. Ships powered up after long silence. Crews reported to stations. Weapons systems came online. And on a blue and green world that had stayed quiet for 200 years, humanity prepared to remind the galaxy why they were feared enough to become legends. The call had been heard, and humans always answered. The message arrived at Earth Defense Command at 3:47 hours, decoded by systems that had been waiting 200 years for exactly this moment. Within minutes, alarms rang throughout the lunar base. Within an hour, the United Nations Emergency Council was in session. Admiral Bow stood at the head of the conference table, her gray hair tied back in a tight bun. She had commanded Earth's defensive fleet for 12 years, and in that time, she had never expected to use it for anything beyond patrol duties. Now she looked at faces on screens from around the world, presidents, generals, scientists, all waiting for her assessment. "The message is genuine," she said. "An alien species, sent us a distress call. They're facing extinction from something called the Swarm. They need military assistance." A long silence followed. Finally, the Secretary General spoke. "We haven't had contact with alien species in 2 centuries, not since the incident." Everyone in the room knew what he meant. First contact 247 years ago. Humanity had reached out with open arms, eager to join the galactic community. Instead, they had been met with fear and violence. Humans were too aggressive, too unpredictable, too dangerous. 3 colony ships destroyed. 2,000 lives lost. The message was clear: stay away. So Earth did. They pulled back, stayed silent, developed their own technology in isolation. The rest of the galaxy forgot about them, and humans let them forget. It was safer that way. This could be a trap, from Brazil suggested. Or it could be real, Admiral Bo countered. Someone out there is dying. They reached out to us, to humans, species that supposedly everyone forgot about. We have no obligation to help them, the Chinese representative said quietly. They made it clear we weren't welcome. Bo nodded. You're right, we don't owe them anything, but is that who we are? Is that who we want to be? Deep in the shipyards of Europa, Engineer was already at work. She had heard the message through unofficial channels. Her brother worked at Defense Command, and she knew what was coming. A call for volunteers, a mission into unknown space, possible war. She stood in the vast hangar, looking up at ships that hadn't moved in decades. Earth's fleet was old by design. After the incident, they had focused on defense, not exploration. These ships were built tough, built to last, built to take damage. Fusion drives instead of whatever fancy technology the aliens used. Titanium hulls reinforced with Earth steel. Kinetic weapons that didn't need complex power systems. They look like junk, a younger engineer said, standing next to her. Smiled, they look like survivors, big difference. Her terminal beeped. The official call had gone out. Earth Defense Force was requesting volunteers for an emergency response mission. Destination, classified, duration, unknown, risk, extreme. Didn't hesitate, she hit the accept button. Across Earth's military bases, thousands made the same choice. Captain Wu sat in his apartment in Seoul, reading the mission brief on his tablet. He was 46 years old, a veteran of the corporate wars, the ugly fighting that had erupted when Earth's megacorporations tried to take control of the outer colonies. He had retired 3 years ago with honors and a chest full of medals he never wore. His wife sat next to him on the couch. She already knew what he would do. After 20 years together, she could read him like a book. You're going, she said, not a question. Someone has to, Wu replied. It doesn't have to be you. He looked at her, seeing the fear she was trying to hide. Yes, it does. You know it does. Took his hand. Then come back. Promise me you'll come back. Wu wanted to promise, but he had never lied to her. So instead he said, I'll do everything I can. The next morning, he reported to command. 2 days later, he was promoted to captain and given command of the UNS Indomitable, a heavy cruiser that had been in mothballs for 15 years. Engineer and her team were already at work bringing it back to life. The debate in the council continued for 3 days. Some wanted to help, others wanted to hide. A few suggested a middle ground, send a small force, just enough to observe and report back. On the 3rd day, a ship entered Earth orbit without warning. It was small, barely larger than a shuttle, and its design was completely alien. Every defense system locked onto it, but the ship broadcast a simple message. I am human. I request permission to land. Sat across from Admiral Bo an hour later. He looked human enough, Asian features, dark hair, average height, but there was something different about him. He moved with perfect efficiency. His eyes took in everything. I've been out there, he said without preamble, for 20 years observing, learning. The galaxy thinks we're extinct or mythical. They forgot we existed. Why? Bo asked. Because we scared them, we still do. They're used to species that evolved on easy worlds, low gravity, stable climates, gentle environments. Earth is a death world by their standards. The gravity alone would cripple most of them. They look at us and see predators. Are we? Smiled grimly. Compared to them, yes, but that's not a bad thing right now. They need predators, they need survivors. The swarm is wiping them out because they don't know how to fight like we do. He pulled up a hologram showing this advance. System after system gone dark. They're systematic, efficient. They consume everything organic and move on. The aliens can't stop them because alien warfare is all about shields and energy weapons and long-range targeting. Very civilized, very clean. And human warfare? Bo asked, though she already knew the answer. Close range. brutal, adaptable. We learned to fight in atmospheres, in oceans, in the vacuum of space using equipment that barely worked. We learned to win when we were outnumbered. That's what they need. Bo leaned back. You think we should go? I think we already decided 2 centuries ago what kind of species we are. We pulled back, but we never stopped being human. Someone called for help. That's all that matters. The council met one final time. The vote was close, but it passed. Earth would respond. Admiral Bo addressed the fleet 2 days later, her image broadcast to every ship and station. We've been quiet for a long time, she said. The galaxy forgot about us and we let them, but someone out there remembers. Someone sent us a call for help. They're dying and they thought of us. I don't know what we'll find out there. I don't know if we'll make a difference. But I know this, when someone calls for help, humans answer. We always have. We always will. The fleet prepared. 32 ships, ranging from heavy cruisers to fast destroyers. 15,000 personnel, all volunteers. Engineer worked day and night, bringing old systems online, retrofitting weapons, patching hulls that had been sitting idle for decades. Captain Wu stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching his crew work. They came from every corner of Earth. Different languages, different cultures, different backgrounds. But they all shared one thing. They had all chosen to be here. Lieutenant Han, his second-in-command, approached. All departments report ready, sir. We can launch on your order. Wu nodded. He thought about waiting back on Earth, about the thousands of families watching their loved ones prepare to leave, about the species across the galaxy who had no idea what was coming. Helm, he said calmly, prepare for jump, set course for the system. Course locked, sir. All ships, this is Indomitable. We jump in 5 minutes. Let's go remind the galaxy who we are. The fleet gathered in formation. Old ships with old designs, powered by technology that aliens would consider primitive. But they were built by human hands, crewed by human hearts, and carried with them 200 years of silence that was about to end. The countdown reached 0. Space tore open, and humanity jumped into the unknown, answering a call from strangers they had never met, to fight an enemy they had never seen, simply because it was the right thing to do. Far ahead, Scholar waited, watching the stars, hoping the legends would arrive in time. Behind on Earth, Wu stood at her window, looking up at the night sky, holding on to hope. And between them, traveling faster than light, Captain Wu and 15,000 volunteers raced toward a war that would change the galaxy forever. The sensors on Prime started screaming warnings 3 hours before dawn. Unknown ships were dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Lots of them. Elder rushed to the command center, his old body protesting the quick movement. Around him, military officers shouted orders trying to identify the new arrivals. His first thought was they had found Prime. This was the end. But the sensor readings were wrong. These ships weren't organic like vessels. They were metal, old metal, and their energy signatures were strange fusion reactions instead of quantum drives. Are they pirates? Someone asked. Too organized, the tactical officer replied. They're in military formation, 32 vessels, all different sizes, moving together. Scholar burst into the command center without permission. Security tried to stop her, but she pushed past them. It's them, the humans, they came. Impossible to confirm, the tactical officer said. We're receiving a communication, but the language is unknown. Run it through the translation matrix from the ancient texts, demanded, quickly. They did. The translation was rough but clear enough. A voice, calm and steady, spoke words that had only read in legends. This is the United Nations ship Indomitable, Captain Wu commanding. We received a distress call from this system. We're here to help. Repeat, we are here to help. The command center fell silent. Every eye turned to Elder. The old stared at the screen showing the human fleet. They looked primitive, blocky designs. No elegant curves, ships that looked built for function, not beauty. "Open a channel," said quietly. Captain Wu's face appeared on the screen. He looked human enough, 2 eyes, bipedal hair on his head. But there was something in his eyes, something that made understand immediately why humans scared the galaxy. This was a predator's gaze, not cruel but absolutely confident. "I am Elder of the Council. You are, actually human." Wu smiled slightly. "Last time I checked, we got your message. Scholar's message. Sounded like you needed help." "We know, we reviewed the data sent. They're about 3 hours behind us. They followed our jump signature. They'll be here soon." Panic rippled through the command center. "You led them here," an officer shouted. "We drew them here," Wu corrected. "Better to fight them where we choose than let them pick the battlefield. Besides, you have defenses here, planetary shields, weapon platforms. Use them." Elder studied this human carefully. "You just arrived. You've never fought how can you?" Elder Wu interrupted gently. "With respect, you called us because you're losing. We're here because we know how to fight. Trust us or don't, but decide quickly." Before could respond, alarms blared. They had arrived. They came in a swarm, just like their name suggested. Hundreds of bioships, grown rather than built, dripping with organic acids. They moved like a school of fish, flowing around each other, heading straight for Prime. The Galactic Defense Fleet moved to intercept. 20 alien warships, sleek and advanced, their quantum shields glowing with energy. They opened fire with directed energy weapons, beams of pure light that could cut through asteroids. They absorbed the damage and kept coming. "Shields down to 60%, the tactical officer reported. "They're regenerating faster than we can damage them." On the Indomitable's bridge, Captain Wu watched the alien ships fight. They stayed at long range, using their advanced weapons from a safe distance. Clean, civilized, completely ineffective. "Helm, take us in. Full speed," he ordered. "Sir," his helmsman questioned. "They're fighting at range if we get close." "They're dying at range, Lieutenant. Close distance. All ships follow our lead." Lieutenant hand-checked the weapons display. Kinetic weapons loaded, missiles armed. "But sir, their bioships can probably take a lot of punishment." "Then we'll give them more than they can take." The human fleet accelerated, burning straight toward the swarm. The alien defense forces watched in confusion as these primitive ships charged directly at the enemy. "Are they insane?" an officer whispered. Watching from the command center, smiled. "No, they're human." The Indomitable hit the formation like a hammer. Their shields, simpler than alien versions but incredibly dense, absorbed the initial impacts. Then their weapons opened up. Not energy beams, not elegant lasers. Solid slugs of tungsten moving at a fraction of light speed. Missiles with explosive warheads. Weapons that Earth had been using for centuries because they worked. The bioships weren't designed for this kind of punishment. Their regeneration could heal energy burns, but couldn't regrow flesh torn apart by metal moving at impossible speeds. The first ship exploded in a spray of organic matter. "Target destroyed," Han reported. 20 more in range." "Fire everything." The human fleet tore through the swarm using tactics that made no sense to the watching aliens. They flew in atmosphere-style patterns, rolling and diving like fighter jets instead of following the elegant maneuvers of space combat. They covered each other, concentrated fire, and when shields failed, they kept fighting with damaged ships. Pilot led her fighter squadron into the chaos. She was 28 years old and had logged more hours in simulators than actual space. But she had also trained in Earth's atmosphere, flying through canyons and storms where one mistake meant death. This was easier. "Gold Squadron on me," she called. "We're going through that debris field." "Through it, ma'am?" her wingman asked. "You heard me. They won't follow us there. Too dangerous." She was right. The ships avoided the debris from destroyed vessels trying to flow around it. led her squadron straight through, using the wreckage as cover, emerging behind the formation. Her missiles hit unprotected rear sections. 3 more ships died. On Prime, Elder watched in stunned silence. The humans fought like nothing he had ever seen. They were aggressive, reckless, and absolutely effective. They turned the battle into close-range chaos where their tougher ships and brutal weapons had the advantage. "They're boarding," the tactical officer shouted. "Human soldiers are boarding bioships." Lieutenant Han led the first boarding team. His squad wore bulky armor, carried weapons that shot metal bullets instead of energy, and didn't hesitate when the acidic blood sprayed across them. "Gas masks on," Han ordered. "This atmosphere will kill us in minutes. Remember your training." They fought through the bioship's interior, a nightmare of organic corridors and hostile environment. But humans had trained for this. They had fought in Earth's deepest oceans, highest mountains, most toxic places. This was just another hostile environment. Han's team reached the bioship's central nerve cluster and planted explosives. They evacuated before the ship tore itself apart from within. "Boarding successful," Han reported back to Wu. "These things die the same as anything else, just need to know where to hit them." The battle raged for 3 hours. The swarm, designed to overwhelm defenses through numbers, found itself cut apart by an enemy that refused to fight the way everyone else did. The human ships took damage, 2 destroyers were crippled, the cruiser Steadfast lost its main engines, but they never stopped fighting. Finally, the remaining bioships retreated, jumping away to hyperspace. Silence fell across the battlefield. Captain Wu stood on his damaged bridge looking at the casualty reports. 43 dead, 200 injured, 2 ships that would need months of repair, but Prime was safe. "Get me Elder," he said quietly. When the connection opened, looked different. The doubt was gone from his eyes. "Captain Wu, we are in your debt." "No debt," Wu replied. "Someone asked for help, we answered, that's all. I have never seen anyone fight like that. So close, so aggressive, how do you?" "We learned a long time ago that running away doesn't work. The universe is dangerous. The only way to survive is to face it head-on." Wu paused. "Elder, this was just a scout force. You know that, right? The main fleet is still out there." The color drained from his face. "That was just a scout force." "Probably, which means we have work to do. This war isn't over, it's just beginning." Stepped forward in the command center. "Captain Wu, may I come aboard your ship? I have spent years studying your people. I want to understand." Wu smiled. "Permission granted, scholar, come meet the legends." An hour later, stood in the Indomitable's docking bay. Human soldiers moved around her, some injured but still working, all of them showing a determination she had only read about. They were shorter than most species, heavier from their high-gravity world breathing oxygen that made her own breathing mask necessary. But they moved with purpose. A young soldier passed, limping on an injured leg but carrying supplies to others. Stopped him. "You're hurt," she said. "Why aren't you in medical?" The soldier looked confused by the question. "These crates need to move, ma'am. I can rest later." That was when understood. The legends hadn't been exaggerating. Humans were exactly what the stories claimed. They were survivors who never gave up, warriors who protected the weak, a species that ran toward danger instead of away from it. She found Captain Wu in the memorial hall, where names of the dead were being engraved on the wall. 43, he said without turning. 43 people who will never go home. Was it worth it? Thought about Prime, about the billions of lives saved today, about the hope that had been rekindled. "Yes," she said softly, "it was worth it, and they would say the same." Wu nodded. "Then we keep going until they are stopped, until this galaxy is safe again." "The other species will want to meet you," said. "The assembly will want to thank you." "Later, right now, we have wounded to treat and ships to repair. The war isn't over." But as he said it, Wu allowed himself a small smile. Humanity had been silent for 200 years. Today, they had reminded the galaxy who they were. And the galaxy would never forget again. 6 months changed everything. The war with the dragged on, spreading across dozens of systems. But something else spread too: humanity. Not just their soldiers and ships, but their ideas, their culture, their way of thinking. The galaxy was learning what it meant to fight alongside humans. General Sung commanded ground operations on 4 different worlds. She was 51 years old, had fought in wars on 3 continents back on Earth, and knew more about combined warfare than most species had ever imagined. She stood in a command tent on 7, surrounded by officers from 6 different alien species, all watching her battle display. "They will attack from the East Valley," she explained, pointing at the hologram. "They always choose the path of least resistance, so we give them what they expect. Infantry holds the center, artillery here and here, but the real trap is mobile armor coming from the north and south, catching them in a crossfire." A officer, his 4 arms crossed skeptically, spoke up. "General, our doctrine suggests we hold defensive positions. This plan requires movement during combat. It's risky." Sung smiled. "All combat is risky. The difference is whether you control the risk or let it control you." The battle went exactly as she predicted. They charged the center, met resistance, and suddenly found themselves surrounded. It was a victory, but more importantly, it was a lesson. The alien soldiers started understanding that defense didn't mean sitting still. It meant taking control. In a medical station orbiting Prime, Doctor was teaching a class. 20 alien medical students watched as she demonstrated techniques on a human volunteer. "The key thing to understand about human physiology," explained, "is that we're built to survive. Our bodies fight. Even when critically injured, our systems will keep functioning far past what seems possible." She showed them scans. "This is a human soldier named. 3 months ago, he took a direct hit from acid, lost 30% of his blood, multiple organ damage. We gave him a 15% survival chance." "What happened?" a young student asked. "He recovered fully, fought in 2 more battles after that." The students looked shocked. "How?" "Human evolution. We come from a death world. Our bodies learn to heal fast, fight hard, and refuse to give up. Teaching you to save human lives means teaching you that normal rules don't always apply." The volunteer, a Marine named Park, grinned from the exam table. "We're too stubborn to die, Doc." Laughed. "That's actually pretty accurate." But the most important lessons weren't happening in classrooms or command centers. They were happening in quiet moments between battles. Sat in the mess hall of the combined fleet carrier Unity, eating with his squad. 3 humans, too, and 6 months ago, this would have been impossible. Now it was normal. "I still don't understand this," the whose name translated to Brass said. He held up a food bar. "You don't need to share rations. Each species has their own supplies." Shrugged. "We're a squad, squads share." "But I'm not human." "Doesn't matter. You fight with us, you're one of us. That's how it works." Brass was quiet for a moment. "Your species is very strange." "Yeah, we get that a lot." It was true. Humans confused the other species constantly. They formed emotional bonds with anyone. They protected injured aliens as fiercely as their own. They gave nicknames to everyone, even enemies. They told jokes in the middle of battles. They played music that ranged from beautiful to incomprehensible. And they never, ever gave up. Himself had become something of a legend. A kid from barely 22 years old who had survived 3 separate incidents that should have killed him. The first time, he took acid burns across his back but still carried his wounded to safety. The second time, his ship lost pressure and he held a breach closed with his own body until repairs could be made. The third time, a drone exploded next to him, leaving him unconscious for 3 days. Each time he recovered. Each time he went back to fighting. Why do you keep fighting? A journalist asked him once, recording an interview for the Assembly's information broadcasts. Looked confused by the question. Because people need help, that's enough, isn't it? The interview went viral across 47 species. Here was a human, young enough that he could have stayed home, injured enough that he had earned a discharge, choosing to keep fighting simply because others needed him. It made no logical sense, but it made perfect human sense. Ambassador spent his days in the Galactic Assembly, trying to explain humanity to species that still couldn't quite believe they were real. Some meetings went well, others were difficult. You're asking us to adopt human combat doctrine, a military advisor said, his tone cold. You're asking us to fight like savages. Kept his voice calm. I'm asking you to survive, there's a difference. Our way of warfare has served us for. And they are winning. You can call us savages if you want, but we're alive. Can you say the same about the 16 colonies you've lost? The advisor bristled but didn't respond. The truth was too obvious. Later, met with Elder privately. The old had become a close ally over the months. They still fear us, said quietly. Even as we save them, they fear us. Good, replied. Fear can keep you alive. What kills you is ignorance. But will they ever trust us? Looked out at the stars. Maybe not fully. We're too different, too aggressive, too stubborn, but trust isn't always necessary. Respect is, and that we're earning. The war ground on. Battles were won and lost. They adapted, attacking in new patterns using different tactics. But so did humanity, and where humans led, other species followed. Engineer worked on combined fleet vessels now, teaching alien mechanics how to repair damage the human way. It doesn't need to be perfect, she explained to a team of engineers. It needs to work. Pretty comes later. Survival comes first. She showed them how to patch hull breaches with whatever materials were available, how to reroute power through damaged systems, how to keep a ship fighting even when half its systems were offline. Tricks that Earth's engineers had learned through centuries of space travel on limited budgets. You make it look simple, one of them said. Laughed, it's not simple, it's desperate, but desperate works. In the command center on Prime, the intelligence division made a breakthrough. An analyst named Rai had been studying movement patterns for months, tracking their jumps, plotting their attacks. She noticed something. They're all coming from the same direction, she told General Sung. Look at this. The hologram showed attacks over 6 months. Every single swarm, every single bioship originated from the same sector of space. Deep space. Uncharted territory that no one had explored in centuries. There's something there, Rai said. A source. Maybe their home world, maybe their command center. The hive core, Scholar said, entering the room. The ancient texts mentioned it. A central intelligence that controls all if it exists, if we could destroy it. The war ends, Sung finished. Within hours, the discovery reached Captain Wu on the Indomitable. He studied the data with his senior officers. Lieutenant Han, pilot, engineer, and scholar, who had become an unofficial member of the crew. It's far, Han observed. 3 weeks jump at maximum speed, through uncharted space, we'd be on our own. And if we do nothing, Wu asked. No one answered, they all knew. They would keep attacking, more worlds would fall, more people would die. We need approval from the Assembly, said. Wu nodded. Set course for Prime, we're calling a meeting. The Galactic Assembly Hall had never been so full. Every species, every representative packed into the chamber. At the center, Captain Wu stood next to Admiral Bo, who had traveled from Earth for this moment. Elder presented the intelligence. We've found the source, the hive core. It's real and we have its location. The hall erupted in debate. Some wanted to defend, others wanted to flee. A few suggested negotiation. It was chaos. Admiral Bo stepped forward, her voice cut through the noise. Enough. The hall quieted. Bo wasn't tall. wasn't physically imposing, but she carried the authority of Earth's unified military, and after 6 months of fighting alongside humans, everyone knew what that meant. "You have a choice," she said simply. "Keep running, keep defending, and eventually lose, or take the fight to them, end this where it started." "You're asking us to attack into unknown space," a representative protested. "It could be suicide." "It could be," Bo agreed. "That's why we're not asking you to go. We're going. Earth's fleet will make the assault. What we're asking is for you to hold the line while we're gone. Keep the busy here. Give us time." "And if you fail?" Bo smiled grimly. "Then we fail, but at least we'll fail trying." Captain Wu spoke next. "6 months ago, you didn't believe we existed. Today, we're standing together. You've learned from us. We've learned from you. They think they can win through fear and numbers. Let's show them what happens when someone fights back." The vote was closer than anyone wanted, but it passed. Admiral Bo would lead the assault force. 30 human ships and 20 volunteer vessels from other species. Captain Wu's Indomitable would be flagship. The rest of the combined fleet would continue defensive operations. In the barracks, prepared his gear with his squad. They had all volunteered for the assault force. "You know this might be a one-way trip," Brass said to him. Nodded. "I know." "Then why go?" "Because someone has to. And because if we don't try, we've already lost." The squad was quiet. Then the member, a young female named, spoke up. "I've been thinking about something. For 6 months I've watched humans fight. You know what I learned?" "What?" asked. "You don't fight because you're stronger or better. You fight because you believe it matters. You taught us that belief. So now we believe too." Felt his throat tighten. "Then we go together. As humans taught the galaxy, no one gets left behind." 3 days later, the assault fleet gathered at the edge of known space. Admiral Bo addressed them one final time. "We're going into the dark," she said. "Into places no one has charted. We might not come back, but every person on every ship volunteered to be here. That's what matters, not the odds, not the fear, the choice. We choose to fight. We choose to hope. We choose to show thee and the entire galaxy that some things are worth risking everything for." She paused. "Let's end this war." The fleet jumped. Space tore open, and 50 ships vanished into the unknown, heading toward the hive core, toward the heart of their enemy, toward a battle that would decide the fate of 47 species. Behind them on Prime, Elder watched them go. He thought about legends becoming real, about a species that scared everyone, about humans who answered a call for help from people they had never met. "Go with honor," he whispered to the empty sky, "and come back, please come back." The jump into the hive core system lasted 3 weeks. 3 weeks of traveling through the darkest reaches of space, where no star charts existed and sensors showed nothing but emptiness. 3 weeks of wondering if the intelligence was wrong, if they were heading to their deaths for nothing. Then they arrived and all doubt vanished. The hive core was massive. Not a planet, but a structure built in space, grown from the same organic material as bioships but on an impossible scale. It was the size of a small moon, pulsing with sickly light, surrounded by thousands of vessels. "Contact in 3 minutes, Lieutenant Han reported from the Indomitable's bridge. "Enemy forces detecting us." Admiral Bo's voice came over the fleet-wide channel from her command ship. "All vessels, this is it. Stay in formation. Remember your training, and remember why we're here." Captain Wu looked at his crew. They were scared, anyone with sense would be, but they were ready. 6 months of war had forged them into something beyond just a crew. They were a family. "Weapons ready," he ordered. "Helm, take us in." The swarm moved to intercept, but they weren't facing the same fleet that had arrived at Prime 6 months ago. This fleet fought with perfect coordination. Human ships and alien vessels moved together, using tactics developed through dozens of battles. Where humans led with aggression, aliens provided covering fire. Where alien shields were strongest, they protected human ships that pushed forward. Pilot led her fighter squadron through the first wave of drones. Gold Squadron, split formation, make them chase us into the debris field. Her pilots scattered, drawing fighters into a trap. When the enemies followed, they flew into the firing solution of waiting cruisers. A dozen drones evaporated in the crossfire. "Good work, Gold Squadron," Admiral Bow transmitted. "All wings continue harassment. Capital ships with me. We're going for the core." The fleet pushed deeper. They fought desperately, throwing everything at the invaders. Bioships exploded. Human destroyers took critical damage. An alien cruiser lost its main engines and drifted away, still firing its weapons until the last moment. The Indomitable shook from multiple impacts. Alarms blared. Engineer's voice came over internal comms. "Bridge, this is engineering. We've lost starboard shielding. Port side is at 40%. I can reroute power, but not for long." "Do what you can," Wu replied. "We just need to get close enough." On the ground, assault carrier Dauntless, Sergeant prepared his squad for boarding action. His team was mixed. 5 humans, 3-2, all volunteers for the most dangerous mission: infiltrate the hive core and destroy it from within. "Remember," said as they checked their equipment, "the air in there will be toxic. Stay sealed, watch your 6, and no matter what happens, we get the job done." Brass, they checked his weapon. "I've been thinking about something you said once, about squads." "Yeah. You said if we fight together, we're one unit. No difference between species." Brass paused. "I didn't understand then, but I do now. We're not human, but we learned from humans. We learned what it means to not give up." Clapped him on the shoulder. "You got it, buddy. Let's show them what we learned." The Dauntless broke through the defenses, using the Indomitable's covering fire. It slammed against the hive core's hull, breaching charges blowing a hole in the organic surface. Squad rushed inside, along with 20 other teams spread across the structure. Inside was nightmare made real. The corridors were alive, pulsing with organic material. The air was thick with spores. Drones swarmed everywhere, defending their home. His team fought through, following the route Scholar had mapped from ancient texts. "The Queen Chamber should be at the center," she had explained. "That's what controls everything. Destroy that and the swarm collapses." They pushed forward, losing soldiers at every intersection. The name took a acid spray meant for her armor melting, her final act saving her friend. 2 human soldiers, and held a position so the rest could advance, fighting until they ran out of ammunition. "Keep moving," shouted, even as tears blurred his vision. "Don't let it be for nothing." Outside, the fleet battle reached its peak. They threw everything at them. Admiral Bow's command ship took a direct hit, systems failing, but she refused to retreat. "All ships, continue the assault. We don't leave until it's done." Captain Wu watched his damage reports pile up. The Indomitable was dying. Hull breaches across 6 decks. Main weapons offline. Life support failing in multiple sections. But they were close. So close. "Captain," Han said quietly, "we can't take much more." Wu knew. He looked at the hive core on his screen, still intact, still pulsing with life. Then he looked at his crew. Young faces, old faces, people who trusted him, people who had followed him into this darkness because they believed it mattered. He made a decision. "All crew, this is the captain. Evacuate to escape pods. Now, that's an order." "Sir?" Han questioned. "I'm ramming the core. 1 ship maximum speed, full fusion core overload. It'll punch through their defenses, give our ground teams the opening they need." Wu's voice was steady. "But you don't need to be here for that. Get to the pods." "Captain, you can't." "I can, and I am. Lieutenant Han, you're a good officer. Take care of the crew. Tell them it was an honor." Han stared at him, then slowly saluted. "It was an honor serving with you, sir." The evacuation alarm sounded. Crew members ran for escape pods, many looking back at their captain standing alone on the bridge. Engineer was the last to leave. "Sir, I could stay, help you." "No, you've got people who need you. Get them home." Wu smiled sadly. "Someone has to tell the story of what we did here." She saluted through tears and left. Alone on the bridge, Captain Wu set the Indomitable on collision course. He thought about his wife on Earth, about the promise he couldn't keep, but he also thought about Prime, about the billions of lives saved, about young soldiers like who believed in something bigger than themselves. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "but this matters." He opened fleet-wide communications one last time. "All ships, this is Indomitable, we're going in. When we hit, push through, finish this, and tell Earth, tell them we answered the call." The ship accelerated. Bioships tried to intercept, but Admiral Bo's fleet cut them down, clearing a path. The Indomitable, broken and dying, raced toward the hive core at maximum speed. Inside the core's team finally reached the Queen chamber. The Queen was enormous, a mass of organic tissue and intelligence that controlled billions of drones. She didn't try to flee. Instead, she spoke through translators built into her flesh. "Why do you resist? We only seek survival. All species consume. We consume worlds." Breathing hard through his mask, raised his weapon. "You consume without asking, without caring. That's not survival, that's murder. And you are different, you kill us. We fight you because you gave us no choice, but we offered you a choice. Join the assembly, share resources, survive together. You refused, so now we end this." The Queen's response was a shriek that shook the entire structure. Drones rushed from every direction. His team formed a defensive circle, firing until their weapons overheated. That's when the entire hive core shook. The Indomitable hit. The impact was like a meteor strike. The ancient human cruiser, its fusion core set to overload, punched deep into the hive core's structure. The explosion that followed lit up the dark system like a new star. The organic walls around his team cracked, atmosphere vented. The Queen's shrieking turned to panic. "Now," shouted, "plant the charges." His team moved with desperate speed, placing explosives on the Queen's central nerve cluster. Brass took a hit from a drone but kept working. Another human soldier fell protecting the detonator. "Charges set," reported. "All teams evacuate 30 seconds." They ran. Behind them, the Queen's screams echoed through dying corridors. The hive core was collapsing, the Indomitable's impact having destroyed critical support structures. Squad reached their extraction point. The Dauntless swooped in, its bay doors open. They jumped the gap one by one. Brass stumbled, injured, and grabbed him. "I've got you, buddy. We don't leave anyone behind." They made it aboard. The Dauntless pulled away as the charges detonated. The Queen died. With her death, the signal controlling the swarm stopped. Thousands of bioships across the system simply stopped moving. The hive core, already damaged, began to tear itself apart. "All ships withdraw," Admiral Bo ordered. "We've won, retreat to safe distance." The combined fleet jumped away. Behind them, the hive core collapsed in on itself, taking with it the intelligence that had directed the swarm for who knows how long. In the escape pod cluster, the crew of the Indomitable watched their ship die. Engineer cried openly. Lieutenant Han stood straight, saluting the where the Indomitable had been. "He saved us all," someone whispered. "He saved the galaxy," Han corrected. News of the victory spread across known space at light speed. The swarm, without their central intelligence, stopped their advance. The remaining bioships either shut down or scattered into deep space, no longer organized, no longer a threat. The war was over. 3 weeks later on Prime, they held a memorial, a massive wall with names carved into dark stone. Captain Wu's name was at the top. Below were the names of 4,000 human casualties from 6 months of war. Next to the human names were alien names, the volunteers who had learned to fight like humans, who had learned what it meant to never give up. Elder stood before the memorial giving the speech. He was older now, looked older, but his voice was strong. They came when we called. These humans, these people we thought were legends, they came, and they taught us something more valuable than any weapon or strategy. They taught us courage. They taught us that the right choice isn't always the easy one. They taught us to fight for each other. Scholar, now promoted to ambassador to Earth, stood next to him. She thought about that first message she had sent into the void, how desperate she had been, how certain she was that no one would answer. They were never legends, continued. They were neighbors we hadn't met yet, friends we hadn't made, and now they are family. The assembly had voted unanimously. Humanity would have a permanent seat on the Galactic Council. Earth's isolation was over. The Sol system would become a hub of trade, culture, and cooperation. On Earth, Wu stood in her garden looking at the night sky. The government had told her about her husband's sacrifice. They offered medals, honors, a state funeral. She accepted none of it. Instead, she asked for one thing, that every ship in Earth's new fleet be required to carry a simple message in their databanks. If you need help, call. Humanity answers. In the training facilities on Luna, Sergeant, promoted and decorated, stood before a class of new recruits, human and alien, all wanting to learn from the veterans of the war. You'll hear people call us heroes, he told them. They'll say we're special, that we're legends, but here's the truth, we're not special. We're just people who showed up when it mattered, people who chose to help when someone called. He gestured to his mixed squad standing behind him. These are my brothers and sisters, human and alien. It doesn't matter where they're from. What matters is they understand what we learned, that courage isn't about being unafraid. It's about being afraid and doing it anyway. That strength isn't about being powerful. It's about using what power you have to protect others. A young human recruit raised her hand. Sergeant, what if we're not good enough? What if we can't be like Captain Wu? Smiled gently. Captain Wu wasn't trying to be a legend. He was just trying to do the right thing. That's all any of us can do. Show up, try our best, help where we can, that's enough. It's always enough. In the years that followed, humanity spread through the galaxy, not as conquerors but as friends. They opened embassies, traded technologies, shared culture. Human music played in alien bars. Human literature was translated into 47 languages. Human cooking became popular on worlds that had never tasted Earth's spices. But more than culture, humans shared their philosophy. The idea that strength should protect, not dominate. That differences make us stronger, not weaker. That when someone calls for help, you answer, because that's what decent people do. New threats emerged as they always do. Pirates, natural disasters, political conflicts. But now the galaxy was ready. Trained by human instructors, fighting with combined tactics, believing in each other, they faced challenges together. And through it all, Earth's ships continued broadcasting their message into unexplored space. If you need help, call. Humanity answers. In a small apartment in Seoul, an old woman named Wu kept that tradition herself. Every night before sleep, she opened her window and looked at the stars. She thought about her husband, about his sacrifice, about the galaxy he helped save. You answered the call, she whispered to the night sky. And because you did, thousands more learned to answer too. You would be proud of what you started. The stars didn't answer, but somewhere in the darkness between systems, a human patrol ship detected a distress signal. The captain, a young woman named, didn't hesitate. All hands, battle stations. Someone needs help, plot a course. Maximum speed. Her crew rushed to their positions without question, because they were human, and humans always answered. On Prime, Scholar, now old herself, sat in her library surrounded by new texts. Not ancient legends anymore, but history books, real accounts of the war, real stories of human sacrifice and courage. A young student approached her. Ambassador, why did the humans help us? They owed us nothing. We had rejected them centuries before. Smiled, thinking back to that moment when the Indomitable first appeared on her sensors, when legends became real, when hope returned to a dying galaxy. Because, she said simply, that's what humans do. They help. Not for reward, not for glory, not because they have to, but because they can. And because someone somewhere decided that's what it means to be human. She looked at her screens, at the star charts showing human ships spread throughout the galaxy. Protecting, exploring, helping. They believed we were only legends, she continued. But we weren't the legends, they were, and when we called they answered, they always answer. The young student left, pondering those words, turned back to her work but paused to look at a photo on her desk. It showed Captain Wu, taken the day after the first battle. He looked tired but determined, a man who had no idea he would become a symbol, a hero who just wanted to help. "Thank you," she whispered to the image, "for showing us what we could be." Far above, in the dark between stars, human ships continued their patrols, continued their mission, continued answering calls that came from the void. Because they had shown the galaxy something important, that legends don't have to be myths, that heroes don't need superpowers, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply answer when someone calls for help. And in that answer, in that simple act of showing up, humanity had changed the galaxy forever. The story of the war would be told for generations. Songs would be sung. Monuments would be built. Children would learn about the humans who came when called, who fought when needed, who sacrificed everything so others could live. But the most important legacy wasn't in the stories or songs or monuments. It was in the message that kept broadcasting into the unknown darkness. If you need help, call. Humanity answers. And somewhere in some distant system, someone would eventually hear it. Someone would need help. Someone would call. And humanity would answer. They always did.